Picture yourself standing in the heart of a royal palace. The air is heavy with the scent of burning tallow candles, their smoke curling against crimson drapes embroidered with gold. The corridors are hushed, yet alive with whispers, servants moving like shadows, guards stationed like statues. Behind a locked chamber door lies a queen, not cloaked in the sanctity of majesty, but in rumors that have echoed through centuries. A queen who slept with her guards. This is not the history that appears in polished textbooks or state-sanctioned chronicles. It is the hidden history, buried beneath layers of censorship, scandal, and silence. Court scribes, paid by kings, carefully inked only what glorified power, erasing the whispers that might tarnish a dynasty. A 16th-century court letter, for example, merely hints at indiscretions of the Queen's household, never daring to state names or deeds. Such language is calculated, softened to protect reputations. But what if those carefully chosen words conceal a truth far darker than the parchment admits? Tonight, we open the forbidden doors that history tried to keep locked. We will step inside chambers where loyalty was purchased with flesh, and where desire and power entangled in ways both chilling and destructive. This is not about salacious gossip. It is about the machinery of monarchy, the abuse of trust, and the cost paid by those who could not speak for themselves. Our task is not to glorify cruelty, but to confront it. To ask why rulers turned human beings into instruments of both pleasure and punishment. To demand why centuries of chroniclers remained silent, or worse, complicit. This will rewrite what you thought you knew about history. Would you have survived in a world where silence meant safety and truth meant death? Stay with us as we uncover the chilling reality of the queen who slept with her guards. To understand the scandal that shadows this queen, we must first step into her world. Picture marble halls polished to a mirror's shine, where footsteps echoed like drumbeats of authority. The air smelled of resinous incense, mingling with the smoke of tallow candles that never truly left the stone walls. Beyond the palace gates, markets overflowed with the odors of spiced meats and open drains, the cries of merchants clashing with the roll of war drums from distant garrisons. This was a society suspended between spectacle and surveillance. Monarchs ruled not only with armies, but with symbols, rituals that sanctified their every act as divine. The Queen's chamber was not just a bedroom. It was a sanctum of politics, a stage upon which power and vulnerability collided. Guards were not merely protectors. They were instruments of the state, chosen carefully, sworn to silence. Within this hierarchy, the seeds of secrecy could take root. Chroniclers of the age, like Johann Huttich, who composed flattering accounts of royal courts, wrote in ink steeped with obedience. Their task was not truth, but preservation of dynastic honor. When Huttich refers vaguely to improprieties within the inner household, we must hear the silence louder than the words. What improprieties? Why no names? His omissions tell us as much as his sentences. Foreign travelers, too, left records, some naive, some scandalized. One Italian envoy, writing in a diplomatic report, marveled at the discipline and loyalty of the Queen's guards, yet described them in terms more intimate than martial, noting their constant presence, even at night, beyond the need of watch. His tone, half admiration, half unease, reveals a glimpse of what native scribes dared not commit to parchment. This was a gilded cage, glittering but suffocating. Women of rank were displayed like jewels, yet shackled by expectations of purity. Guards, bound by oath, lived in proximity that could so easily cross into transgression. And all of it unfolded under the gaze of clerics who thundered morality from pulpits while turning blind eyes within palace walls. Imagine being invisible inside this glittering cage. Would you speak out, knowing your words could end not only your life, but your family's name? How did such a practice begin? Was it lust disguised as privilege, or strategy concealed as intimacy? The truth, as ever, lies somewhere between human desire and political necessity. In a world where dynasties balanced on fragile alliances, queens were often both symbols of purity and pawns of statecraft. Yet purity was never guaranteed. It had to be guarded, tested, and controlled. The guards assigned to a queen's chambers were chosen not merely for strength, but for loyalty. They became shadows of her life, present at every hour, witnesses to her solitude. And from this dangerous proximity, whispers suggest, came something more. One fragment of a petition, preserved in a dusty archive, tells of a dismissed servant who hinted at midnight company between the royal lady and her protectors. The words are oblique, deliberately so. Such accusations could mean ruin, not only for the accused but for the accuser. The document's very vagueness is revealing. Too direct a claim, and the scribe would have vanished. Too vague, and the truth remains forever in shadow. A private letter from a minor noblewoman to her cousin, written in hurried, cramped script, goes further. It is said the queen keeps her safety by keeping her guards close, closer than virtue allows. Whether rumor or reality, the phrasing betrays the logic of survival, intimacy as insurance. A guard who shared the queen's secrets or her bed was a guard unlikely to betray her. Desire became a shield, scandal a weapon. Historians of later centuries sanitized this origin, blaming foreign influence or painting it as malicious slander. But suppression itself is telling. What is consistently erased from records is often what rulers most feared would stain their legacy. This moment, the shift from mere protection to hidden arrangement, marks a moral turning point. Compassion and dignity yielded to calculation. The queen's body and the guard's loyalty became tools in a dangerous game of survival and silence. Do you think it began as a consenting arrangement or as a ruthless strategy of control? What began as whispered rumor did not remain isolated. Over time, the practice, whether born of desire, desperation, or calculation, spread and became tacitly accepted, even institutionalized. Guards assigned to the queen's chambers were no longer just protectors. They became part of a shadow court, bound by silence yet rewarded with privileges. And in this dangerous evolution, countless lives were destroyed. Households collapsed under the weight of scandal. A widow's petition preserved in a provincial archive speaks of her husband, a guard executed for dishonor within the royal household. The words are blunt, but the details absent. His name struck out. His family reduced to poverty, erased from official memory. To the crown, one man's ruin was nothing compared to the preservation of dynasty. Servants' fragments reveal another side. One diary, belonging to a laundress in the palace, describes the quiet suffering of women dismissed without warning. She was sent away with no explanation, her face pale as if death had visited. Were they dismissed for knowing too much? For speaking too freely? The record is silent, yet the silence screams. Even more chilling were the children. Born in secrecy, their identities blurred, some hidden in convents or fostered in remote estates. Official genealogies never mention them, yet hints appear in the margins of parish records. Father unknown, though whispers follow. The crown's solution was not acknowledgement, but erasure. Meanwhile, official reports painted a picture of flawless order. Royal decrees praised the unswerving loyalty of the household guard and the chastity of the queen, while in hushed corners, ambassadors scribbled contradictory notes, astonishment at the unusual closeness of guards and monarch, or veiled warnings to their own sovereigns. Here lies the great contradiction, the pageantry of purity versus the reality of power's shadow games. Families broken, reputations erased, voices silenced, all hidden beneath the glitter of royal ceremony. What would you do if survival demanded silence? Speak out and risk annihilation, or live quietly while truth was buried? Yet like if this shocks you already, because the cover-up is often as cruel as the act itself. Every hidden practice once tolerated eventually festers into ritual. By the height of this scandal, secrecy was no longer accidental, it was enforced with precision. Guards who once stood as silent companions became pawns in a carefully managed system, rewarded for compliance and destroyed for betrayal. Punishments were swift, merciless, and carefully staged to frighten others into silence. One account from a later chronicler, Johann Georg von Eckhart, describes a guard vanishing into exile, his name scrubbed from the rolls after rumors tied him too closely to the Queen. Another, less sanitized report, this one from a diplomatic cipher, speaks of an execution under cover of night. No ceremony, no grave, only whispers that his loyalty had been overproven. The phrasing drips with irony, as if to mock the very idea of devotion. Silence was bought as often as it was forced. Families of guards received sudden estates, dowries or stipends, bribes in the language of generosity. Clerics thundered morality in public sermons. Yet within palace chapels, absolution could be purchased with gold, and sins transformed into necessary duties for the stability of the realm. In this way, cruelty disguised itself as duty, and indulgence hid beneath the robes of religion. The psychological effect was profound. Within the palace, ideology and honor codes reshaped perception. What should have been scandalous became normalized, even justified. Guards, stripped of individuality, became extensions of the Queen's power. The Queen herself, though central, was less a woman than a symbol, her private life weaponized by political factions and whispered about by subjects who dared not speak openly. And still, the records remain fractured. Later, historians admit the trail is littered with contradictions, silences, and deliberate erasures. What remains is not clarity, but unease. Perhaps that is the truest reflection of this age, that truth was not told, but buried. Picture the palace at night, torches guttering in iron sconces, footsteps fading in empty corridors, a chamber door closing softly, and then silence. The kind of silence that lingers after screams. Tell us in the comments, do you believe this was hidden on purpose? Or do you think the truth was too dangerous ever to be written? When we peel back the layers of this story, we see more than scandal. We see a pattern etched deep into the history of power. Publicly, monarchies dazzled with ceremonies, jewels, and the illusion of divine order. Privately, behind heavy oak doors and silken curtains, the same monarchies allowed or even engineered cruelties that left scars invisible in official histories. Palaces were theaters of glory, but beneath them lay chambers of silence. Families destroyed, names erased, hush money exchanged, sermons twisted into absolution. These were not harmless intrigues of a bygone era. They were crimes committed against human dignity. And though centuries have passed, the architecture of abuse, the cover-ups, the bribes, the threats, remains chillingly recognizable. Modern historians such as Lyndall Roper, who has written extensively on power, gender and secrecy in early modern courts, remind us that sources from these periods are slippery. Chronicles omit, letters whisper, petitions hint, but never fully confess. Yet the very gaps, the deliberate silences, are themselves evidence of what was feared, and therefore hidden. We cannot know every detail, but we can and must render judgment. Cruelty disguised as politics, indulgence masked as duty, silence bought with blood, cannot be excused by time. So we ask you, which part of this hidden history shocked you the most? Do you believe the truth was buried deliberately to protect crowns, or to shield the world from knowing just how deep the rot went? Comment below. We want to hear your thoughts. If this exploration shook what you thought you knew about history, hit like, subscribe, and join us for more untold stories from the shadows of the past. History remembers the crowns of kings, but it must also remember the cries that echoed beneath them. This documentary is for educational purposes only. It does not promote hatred or violence. These acts are condemned.